All right, good morning and welcome to Cup of Joe with Joey and Jesse.
Good morning.
I'm Joey.
I'm Jesse.
Many of you know us. We are the ministers at First Church of Christ and in Covington. And I got just thinking we never do that, but
No, yeah,
we've got people that sometimes will watch for the first time.
yeah,
So I want to introduce ourselves. And man, it's beautiful outside,
it
Jesse.
is. I'm wearing shorts.
You're always wearing shorts.
Well,
Um, but it is just it's a beautiful day, and I'm excited because we've been really kind of diving into a sermon series on love, and it's been just kind of a fun. It's been a fun series for me
yeah.
to look at God's perfect love. But the other fun part of it is it's it's allowed me to not only look at a relationship between us and God, but we dive deeper into relationships with us and others.
hmm
And last week we looked at a relationship between us and our spouse,
hmm
a husband and wife,
Yeah.
and what the design of that is, and how that reflects our relationship with us and God.
hmm
And as I've looked more and more at that, I don't know about you, Jesse, but there's more conviction that comes with that type of stuff too,
hmm
because it says, "Oh, there's things I should be doing."
Right.
And it also it gives me new respect for God.
hmm
Um, what's been kind of your take looking at love over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah. The thing that I really find interesting is just how how we don't really realize it because we don't really have an English word for it, but how there's all these different kinds of love,
Yeah,
and so just diving deeper on what each one really truly means. So
yeah.
yeah, I really enjoy it. I've been enjoying that a lot.
Well, and for me too, the other part of it is all these different kinds of love are actually supposed to all be joined together
Right.
in agape love.
hmm
And or actually the Greek word is agapeos,
hmm
the active action of it, which
hmm
we're going to look a little bit more this coming Sunday at the active part of it. But one of the things for me, and I don't know about you, Jesse, but we a lot of times we view this perfect love of God, and then we view these other loves as separate from that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see how they all kind of connect.
Right.
Um, because if I were to tell you the way you love your wife is also the way you're supposed to love God, oh, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
But then also the way you love your kids should be the way you love God.
hmm
And also all that connects to on how we should love other people.
hmm
And it all kind of,
Yeah.
when you start to put the pieces together though, because last week we talked about intimate, and one of those intimate parts is you have to be open with each other. And really, that's what we're supposed to do with our fellow Christian brothers and sisters is
Right.
be open with each other.
Yeah.
Um, and when it comes to this parent love between a parent and a child,
hmm
you see more of that in the church and what that should look like. But a lot of times we overlook it and miss it.
Yeah.
And when you put it all together, it's really cool. I
hmm
get very excited about it. And so yesterday, though, we talked about in the sermon, it was about parent and child, but about God the Father and us as his children.
hmm
And how does God love us and how do we love God back in return?
Yeah.
And when we looked at this, one of the big things we talked about is this is the love of mind. Love
hmm
the Lord with all your mind. And Jesse, when you think about a father and a child love and relationship, how does mind play into that, or does it when you first think about it?
Well, the first thing I thought of is just the training, right? Or like being able to teach someone or your child
Yeah,
um, to help shape their mind.
yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing with God is that's what he does is he trains us up
hmm
and warns us and prepares us for what's coming.
hmm
Because I think that's another big part of it is as parents, that's what we're called to do, which we're going to dive into today. But training up our kids, and that's what God does for us is he trains us up and he warns us about the biggest day of our lives, which is Judgment Day,
hmm
and how to be prepared and what are we to be doing.
Yeah.
And when we love God is we take what he's taught us and we make it our own.
hmm
And when you do that, all of a sudden you're honoring God.
Yeah.
Now, let's flip side that. And Jesse, you kind of talked about this yesterday with the kids. You really dove into a parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
Because one of the struggles I have a lot of times is there are not great parent-child relationships out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's even the way society says to parent has changed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's changed far from the way God designed it.
Yeah.
And what is your view when you think about it and the way parenting is today? What do you think the worldview of parenting is from your standpoint?
Well, parenting, it's even changing now in COVID, where I've seen that there have been people who are getting divorced and that kind of stuff, but they're moving just next door or something like that, so they could still be together but not together at all. And so even that dynamic is
Yeah.
different. So,
When I think that's part of it is divorce has become so big
well, yeah.
that that's changed how parenting happens.
Mhm.
And one of the big things I see a lot is the I'm your friend
Yeah,
parenting.
that too. Yeah.
And that we need to be close together so that
Mhm.
we can be best friends.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think when there are people who they get a divorce, I think a lot of times one parent will do that, and
Yeah.
so it'll make the other parent look bad. But so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like the kids will want to be with the parent who wants to be their friend and gets to do all the fun things. But when in reality, sometimes it's actually the other parent that you need to be with. So,
Yeah. And the other thing I've noticed too is you have the flip of that of a parent is just you are my kid. I tell you this to do, and otherwise I don't want you in my life.
Yeah.
Like you obey me, that's it,
Mhm.
and that's final. And that's not even exactly how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of that because that's absent parents, and that was a big thing in our generation
Right.
of parents who were so into their work and so into their own lives that the babysitter raised the kids or somebody else raised the kids, and the kids had no real relationship with their parents.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend when I was younger that, well, actually, girlfriend,
Yeah.
13 years old,
Yeah.
as much
Yeah.
as a girlfriend
Yeah.
you can have at
Yeah.
13. But her parents were really, really rich.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, that would be great. And what she told me was, the last time I had dinner with my parents,
Yeah.
and I said, when we go on vacation,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we have one dinner together
Yeah.
on vacation, and that happens twice a year.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? It's gotten so far off
Yeah.
track.
Yeah.
Parenting has. So what is God's design for it?
Mm-hmm.
What is God? Because once we can understand that, it helps us then to even be able to better understand our relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because we can read our relationship with God and know this is what we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when we understand the comparison that God has made of this is what a father's supposed to be, this is what a child's relationship with a father is supposed to be, it changes everything.
Yeah.
So you actually dove into this yesterday.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
What did you talk about with the kids yesterday about what verse did you go into?
Yeah, so we looked at specifically Ephesians 6, and we went through verses 1 through 4 because I talked about the children's relationship, but I also wanted to mention the father's relationship too, because then I could piggyback off that and talk about what our relationship with God the Father is supposed to look like too.
Yeah, and that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think too the kids should know what a father is supposed to look like because there is a sense of accountability from a kid to a parent.
Yeah.
Of hey, you should be loving on me in this way, or we should be doing more of this. And when you did that, verses 1 through 3 really dives into the kids part.
Yeah.
And
right.
Actually, you talked about this with the kids, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just kids here. Because
Right,
it says
yeah.
children.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you say when you brought up the children aspect?
Yeah, so I was like, and so a lot of times when I read a verse, I get like halfway through it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop right there. So I got one word into it this time. Like, okay, hold on one second. Just to clarify, we're all children. And they were like, you're not a child. I'm like, well, yeah, I am. I have parents. Like we all have parents. We're all children. And then in a broader sense, we're all children of God. So I mean, but we all have parents.
Yeah.
So
and when you read this, and that's why we're going to start with the children's part first, because we've got to understand our role as children before we can understand our role as parents.
Yeah.
So we are to be following this even as adult children.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse, go ahead and read that first
Yeah.
3 verses.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on earth.
Okay. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that all break down to?
So
I'm going to let you take over here.
So basically, we just talked about what it means to obey your parents, and I think the biggest part there was in the Lord, because sometimes parents, they'll say something that isn't necessarily what the Bible says, and so you got to obey your parents, but as long as it's biblical. And then after that, we talked about what it means to honor your father and mother, to listen and to obey them, and when we get down to the next verse, but to really listen to the instruction that they're giving you.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's going back to the obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a big key there. This is how God designed it.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back at that word there, this is right. We are designed to obey the parents in the way God has instructed us to.
Yeah.
And that gets into, because you'll have kids say, well, my parent told me to go and punch a kid at school.
Yeah.
So do I go punch the kid at school?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not in the Lord.
Right.
There is a caveat here of obeying your parents in the Lord, and then that honor. What does that word honor mean, Jesse?
So we basically said respect, and basically it's to just show that you are that they're in a place of power, not power, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that they're up here.
Yeah.
And you are living in respect to them. But I looked up the Greek word there, and it actually means to set a high value to something. And when you set a value of something, you're saying this is worth this much. And when you're honoring your parents, it's saying they as parents are worth this much. And the way you live your life, because that's what it comes down to. It's not just an obedience. Like you said, it's taking their instruction and following it. And this is where it comes to us as children, adult children. And this is really where this applies in, is the way we live our lives sets value to how our parents parented us. Because if you think about it, what's the one thing, what do you hear all the time if you leave a door open all the time when you come into a house?
Shut the door. Do you think we're heating the whole community?
Yeah, you hear that. But did your parents raise you in a barn?
Yeah, that too.
But you always hear, did your parents raise you in a barn? Is that how your parents raised you?
Yeah.
Was to do that? And I've even heard that of where spouses will talk about that, and they'll go back and forth on, were you allowed as a kid growing up to just throw your laundry on the floor? Then why do you do that now?
Yeah.
Well, no, I wasn't allowed to, but I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
Well, if you weren't there, why are you doing it now?
Yeah.
That's what that whole thing is honoring your parents as you become older, taking what they say and really applying it to your life. And not just obeying them in the moment, but taking that instruction further and going a step further with it as you grow up. And the big key there too is when you honor your parents, if you have parents, because there are some people that have had parents that are not good parents. They weren't there for them. They didn't train them the right way. But are we still to honor our parents even if our parents didn't train us right?
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
By living for Christ.
And when you live for Christ, it makes your parents look better. And I think one of the hardest things, though, is, but my parents don't deserve the credit there.
Yeah, but we don't deserve salvation.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it comes down. It's honor your father and mother. Just do do what you're supposed to, live for Christ.
Yeah.
And that way your parents look good. And the other thing too is that's then a testimony to your parents,
Mm-hmm.
because I've actually heard that before, when I've talked to parents who have kids as they graduate, when I was a youth minister.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk to them and say, "Hey, you've done a phenomenal job at raising your kid. They know their Bible. They do this.
Mm-hmm.
They are loving people." And I've been told by parents, they learned that at church, not from me,
Mm-hmm.
because we've not taught them that at home. But then later, those parents start to come to church.
Yeah.
Because, it's a conviction to them,
Yeah.
and it helps them out.
Mm-hmm.
One thing though, we're gonna just kind of jump back to this a little bit, but the reason why we are to honor our father and mother and obey them even after we move out of the house is that verse 3, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. That's actually a reference back to the Old Testament,
right?
Back into Exodus. And when you look at that, what do you think it means that you may have long life on the earth?
I'm assuming, since it's talking about Exodus, that this is talking about the when you live and you're honoring your father and mother, you're living for Christ, or for not in Exodus, but you're living for God, and so you're going to be doing the right things. You're going to be following what the commandments are, that kind of stuff. So
and actually, when you look at the word, it doesn't say earth, land.
Oh, okay.
When you look at it in Exodus. So one of the cool parts there is when you dive into that, you go, oh, he's talking about living long in the land. And what happens when the people weren't following God?
They got taken over.
And sometimes moved out of the land.
Right, yeah.
If you want to stay in this land and live happy where God is in control and everything's going good, follow God as your parents are training you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that really needs to be instilled. But that's where the flip comes.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we are parents, we need to take that role of training them up. Because if our kids aren't being trained in that, how are they going to know?
Yeah.
Luckily, a lot of kids nowadays, and this is one of the cool things, it's really weird because there are kids who their parents don't take them to church, but their parents don't care what they do. So they say, if you want to go to church, go to church. Yeah. And we've got people who step in and say, I want to be a father figure to you spiritually. Mm-hmm. And I want to come in and I want to train you up. And this next part, when we get to the parents, I don't think this is just for people who have kids. Mm-hmm. I think this is for anybody who is in the church, who is around training kids up, and could be a spiritual parent to them. And that's where this verse comes in. Go ahead and read verse 4, Jesse.
Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the
Lord. Fathers, don't exasperate. Mm-hmm. What does that word exasperate mean?
In the translation that we read yesterday, it said, do not make your children angry.
Yeah.
So don't provoke them. Don't make them angry on purpose.
Yeah. Don't do stuff just because you can. Mm-hmm. My kids irritated me, so I'm going to punish them in a way that makes them angry. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say something to anger them as their punishment. And that's not what it should be.
Yeah.
But instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. That's what parenting is supposed to be, is training them up. Mm-hmm. But training them up in what?
In the Lord.
Yeah. Isaiah 45:13. I came across this verse, and this is what God is telling Isaiah to tell the people as they are moving back into the land. And he's telling them, this is how you are to raise your children. And he says, all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. There's a key word there. Mm-hmm. Not taught about the Lord, but taught by the Lord. Mm-hmm. And when you look back into that Ephesians 6:4, instruction of the Lord, or some will say instruction in the Lord, depending on your translation. That's powerful right
Mhm.
there, because we are to be training our kids up in the Lord and teaching them not just about the Lord, but saying, hey, this is what God says.
Yeah.
We're to be reading our Bibles with our kids.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's something very important, because a lot of times we'll do little devotionals, and I think those are good.
Mhm.
But on top of it, we should be reading the Bible, because there are some devotionals, I get frustrated. Some of the devotionals will be really good stuff and a lot of material,
Mhm.
but there is no Bible verse at
Yeah.
all in it.
Yeah.
How is that? That's just teaching them about God,
Right.
not teaching them what God says.
Right.
We need to be reading God's word to them. We need to be everything that Christ has taught us. We need to be teaching them what Christ said.
Yeah.
And how Christ said it, and really diving into that.
Mhm.
And when it comes down to it, that's what Deuteronomy 6:4-9 is all about. And actually, our key verse for this month is based out of that.
Mhm.
It's in Luke, but actually, when you jump back to it, it's a quote
Right.
of Deuteronomy 6. So, Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 4, says this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. And really, when you look at the Luke passage, this is just a quick
Mhm.
side note, it adds mind in there.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because a lot of scholars believe this, and these words shall that I command you today shall be on your heart, is actually referencing the mind.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
they viewed this in
Mhm.
the Jewish culture as loving with your mind also,
Yeah.
because you should have all of this up here.
Mhm.
You should be thinking about it. And then it says not only should you have this, what God has trained you as the Father, but now you should be taking what God's trained you for, and you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. Um, Frontlets between your eyes is actually, they should be on the inside of your eyelids.
Hmm.
Did you ever joke about that when you were kids, Jesse, about trying to write the answers to test, or like write them on the inside of your eyelids? That way you could close your eyes and see what the
Yeah.
answers were. We were weird kids growing up,
Yeah.
but that's what it's saying is it should be, even when you close your eyes,
Mhm.
you should be seeing God's word.
Mhm.
And then it says, you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. This should be your life. And that's what we
Mhm.
talked about. Everything you're learning about God should be yours, and it should be how you live.
Mhm.
Not just what you know it, but it should be active in you.
Yeah.
And when it's active in you, as a parent, you're not just training your kids by telling them what to do, you're training them by living it out.
Right.
That's the biggest part of parenting, is we are to teach them. And if we ever out of our mouths as parents say, do as I say, not as I do,
Mhm.
shame on us.
Mhm.
That's not how you parent.
Yeah.
It should always be, hear what I say, see what I do, follow me as I follow Christ.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. And we should be doing that as adults, period, for the kids in our church and in our community. Hear what we have to say. We want to train you kids up, but also follow our example,
Mhm.
because we're following the example of Christ.
Mhm.
That should be our goal. That is what parenting is.
Yeah.
And then they should be following us. It's like a cycle.
Yeah.
It's like the caterpillar aspect of it.
Mhm.
You start off as a kid, you're trained up, you're transforming, and as you're transforming, you become a beautiful butterfly. You're
Mhm.
following God, and then you say, "All right, I want to now make my own larva." And that sounds weird to say it that way,
Yeah.
but now I'm going to train them up too, though.
Mhm.
And it's a whole process.
Yeah.
We need to be doing that and let our kids do the same thing, so that we can have a godly world.
Mhm.
We talk about one of the big issues of our world has become, and our country really is what we get into. Our country's become so corrupt, and it's not the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
It starts not by rioting. It starts not by protesting, not by putting big speeches out there or doing any of that. It all starts by us just coming and saying, we're going to work on our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Let's change our kids first.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I've I can't go anywhere else with that.
Yeah.
Jesse, you got anything to add?
No, I think the biggest thing there is, like you said, not only are we teaching them, but we're also actually doing it. We're living it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's all we've got for today. Um, uh, if you want to get a hold of us, if you got more questions, I encourage you to reach out to us. Go to our website,
CovingtonFCC.com.
and look on there. It's got all our information to contact us, and it's got different ways you can get plugged into.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to encourage you, if you want to get more plugged in on how to train up kids in the Lord, work on training yourself up first. Get plugged into a Bible study. Read the reading plan. Read your Bible, even if it's not the reading plan. Really start to dig in, and then start to take what you're learning and just pass that on to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you have a blessed day today. We'll hope to see you this week, either Wednesday or on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
God bless.